Test, test, test. Okay, now we are rolling.
Test.
Thank you so much for joining me here on there. This is actually a very interesting topic because, as we just heard, the internet had this problem for a long, long time, and there were a lot of developments which now are very promising that we are able to actually solve this. So those are for people who have different approaches, who are trying to solve this problem of identity and spam on the internet. So let's start just with you, Diego. Who you are, introduce yourself, and why, what you're working on right now. Yeah.
Well, I'm the former Secretary of Innovation of the City of Buenos Aires, and I've started working with a team developing a self-sovereign identity protocol anchored in blockchain to give back individuals the ability to control their identity on the higher level possible, which is the first level being I'm human, the second level being I'm unique human being, as the solution that WorldCom is providing, and the third level is which of the humans in the planet I am. So Quark ID tackles that problem relying on blockchain technology and giving users the ability to control how that data, how that personal information is used over the internet.
Okay, so digital identity basically by, on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's digital identity, but in a specific, you have digital identity in several different flavors. Digital identity may be great. We have today several different solutions for digital identity, but they're centralized, and the information relies on a third party controlling every piece of data that you own. And that, for me, is something that we should avoid. What Quark ID proposes is that each entity controls just the data about you that they have. We shouldn't create this super entity that has all of the data that makes me myself. That is very dangerous. And today with AI, that is a biggest even danger.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into the dangers later. Martin, can you please introduce yourself and about World a little bit?
So I'm Martin. I'm a regional general manager at Tools for Humanity. That is a company behind building the World protocol. So basically, this is a project co-founded by Sam Altman and Alex Blania some 5 years ago. So basically, from the same minds that we're now accessing all these beautiful tools on AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Sora, started seeing an issue in terms of how do we solve for personhood at scale? How do you have something that allows you online to prove that you're a human, that you're not a bot, in order to preserve certain attributes of the internet as we know it, and have a way to ensure that the benefits of AI can reach all humans on Earth. So that's why WorldCoin was created 5 years ago. Basically consists of 4 different pillars. One is World ID, a universal proof of personhood built out of your biometrics. WorldCoin token, that is a new cryptocurrency that basically provides you ownership and financial access to this network. The World Chain, that is an L2 on the Ethereum network that we just launched, basically where all these transactions happen. And lastly, the World App, that is a mobile app through which you can obtain this credential. In a nutshell, the vision is that creating a layer of decentralized, privacy-preserving identification in which all of us can ensure that there's a human and uniqueness behind an action online.
Agustín?
Okay, well, my name is Agustín Kassis. I'm the founder and CEO of La Crypta, the biggest Bitcoin community in Argentina. There's the army. Thank you very much. We are open source developers. We created more than 80 repositories regarding with Lightning, Bitcoin, and Nostr. We always do everything is open source. We try to create everything. We try to develop protocols and platforms that are open for everybody. And we think that Nostr does provide a good solution for providing people creating. It's completely open. It's permissionless. It doesn't. It's not owned by anyone. You can create it. It's under development, so a lot of people can contribute. And I think there are a lot of different options. Actually, right now, I think that identities, even if it's not KYC, I do believe that there are a bunch of companies that own a lot of data just by having a Gmail, Hotmail, or whatever. There are a bunch of or even social networks. They already have all that. And I do believe that we should just split in different domains. We can discuss it later, but we do have a solution. It's called Lightning Domains, that we would like to give the power back for the users, for different domains that give identity for users. And we do believe that that could be a way to decentralize the thing, unlike any other companies owning everything. I know that you do have good faith, but I do believe it might be dangerous for companies or governments, most governments, to own data and run the stuff.
Yeah, I'm Rabble, and before I worked on social media protocols, I was working on OpenID and worked on the OAuth protocol that lets you log in with Facebook and Twitter like that. OAuth was supposed to be the first part, and then we were supposed to add the decentralized identity that was going to come right with it. And the big companies just took the OAuth part, and they're like, I think we'll just keep all the data and everyone's identities. We don't need to open this up. And this is such a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing, one, because there's a lot of incentives that push towards centralization and control and taking it away from people. And users don't know it's a problem until after. And so I'm working on Nostr now, which has the decentralized identifiers, not a DID, but and that works. But it also, you need to realize when you think about identity, we aren't one identity. We have a multitude of different identities to different communities, and that's important to our humanity. And that government name and ID is only one of them, and not the most important in most of our lives.
Yeah, maybe I'm interested in, because you basically saw how Twitter grew, and Twitter, I guess, had a huge spam problem at some point. Can you maybe walk us through into what problems you had when scaling up, and if you found solutions? And also now, when Elon Musk took over, there was a huge discussion about bots and that he's not able to control them. Why is it so hard to solve this spam and identity problem?
I mean, the spam problem is hard to solve in the identity because the economic incentives of a spammer is better than the economic incentives of a honest, real user. And so the problem is that you get more value from gaming the system than you get from playing it honestly. So Twitter originally used phone number verification to check things, and at the time it was hard to get new phone numbers, and that worked for a bunch of years. Twitter also never had a real names policy. It was always just put the name you want to be there, and that was really important. And Google Plus tried to push a real names policy on people and didn't take off as a social network because of that, in part. So, we need to realize that you have different names. And originally, bots on Twitter were one of the coolest, funnest parts about Twitter. Because a bot on Twitter, if it isn't impersonating a person and trying to do something deceptive, can be a fun, it's great to have bots on our networks.
Do you remember this? That bot that you tagged it and you got, it's killed right now. It doesn't work.
So what happened is all the bots got killed because there were a few bad bots and people didn't have the tools to sort out who are the people they want to talk to and who aren't the people they want to talk to.
So, Diego and Martin, your identification is very much connected to either the iris, actually, which is just your human body, or your governmental ID, as far as I understand it. So how would you answer to Rabble, who argues that every human being has different identities and we should actually be able to give them the opportunity to also identify on the internet on that?
I partially agree. I don't think we have different identities. I think that we have one identity with different claims. So I may be whatever pseudonym I use in Discord and whatever other pseudonym I use in Twitter or in any other network, and nobody should know that that pseudonym, it's me. But I should control every one of them. And I can take different roles, and maybe nobody should be able of connecting that roles to me at the end. And I completely agree with that. The thing is, today in the identity, and that is okay when we're dealing with our digital lives. The thing is, then we need to go back to our real world lives. We need to buy a car. We need to get into a building. We need to cross borders to another country. And those two realities, at the end of the day, have some kind of connection. Again, without revealing that my Discord username, it's Diego in the real world. That shouldn't happen. But those things are connected, and that get us back to bots and WorkCoin type of solutions, which is, hey, I may use this whatever pseudonym in Discord, but I'm not a bot. I'm a unique human being, and I'm interacting as a human being. We don't rely on biometrics as a protocol. We don't deal with biometrics at all. Each institution, each company, each community using Quark ID may decide which type of requirement they ask their users to get onboarded. So I could have, for example, a booth over here, and I think we do, and you can go there and mint a verified credential using Quark ID without giving zero personal information. Now, for example, in the city of Buenos Aires, forgetting your birth certificate or your driver's license will require you to go through a KYC process, because I may not give my birth certificate to another person who's not me. So that is a requirement that the government of Buenos Aires made. And the requirement of the guys of Quark ID here is different. And I think that each organization, each community should have that freedom.
Interesting question. Yeah, I would say that I'm thinking it's about providing access to the digital economy, or digital in general. Kind of today, if you don't have a smartphone or you're not digitally connected, you're kind of excluded from the world. You're excluded from a lot of tools that can make you a lot more productive. So the idea is how you trigger that inclusion, preserving privacy, and I do believe people can have many different identities for different use cases, but underlying on that is this basic question if there's a human or not behind an online action, and that's why biometrics in the concept of WorkCoin were so important, in the sense that it's something that enables inclusion at scale, preserving privacy, and basically tackling the issues that we were just discussing around creating trust and deterring bad actors online, right? So basically, bots are fine, but the idea is to be able to discern what's a content driven by a bot versus one's driven by a human. I mean, at the end of the day, you think about it, most of our democracies are built on this information layer, and that information layer today, it's somewhat at risk, right? Particularly with the prevalence of AI, it's becoming increasingly difficult to differentiate what's true, what's factual versus what's not, what's human versus what's bot. This can compromise a lot of the things in which today we build the fabric of society. So how do we empower users with something that enables us to prove that there's a particular person behind a single action online, preserving privacy and building other identities on top of that, right? So as building this project, a couple of things that for us were very important because it became obvious that something like World ID is going to be necessary is to build this with the basic principles of blockchain. Trust by design, right? Blockchains are transparent. As they scale, they become more secure. So inherently, that creates trust in the ecosystem. And then privacy by design. So the fact that via biometrics, you can join this network without having to provide any other information about yourself, right? Today, we trust a lot on KYC processes, centralized, that we need to provide a lot of information. So how can we do something that has trust, that is privacy preserving, and that achieves the scalability and inclusion for something like eventually Twitter, to use this as a protocol to differentiate humans and bots?
Agustín, you are a Bitcoiner, and you are in a space where a lot of people are very privacy, actually value their privacy. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto, we don't know who he is. He is an anon. We don't know if it's one person, if it's 10 people. And a lot of people in the Bitcoin space say that privacy is actually a very, very important thing. So what would you say? Do we need bots? Is it okay to be anonymous? How are we able to solve this spam issue by also kind of giving people the ability to not connect their real identity to, or their government identity, let's say?
Well, I don't know if I got an answer for that because I think it's a very difficult thing to solve. Honestly, it's a challenge. We are trying to solve it as decentralized as possible, so we always try to, as Rabble said, like maybe some of the things they start like starting with a protocol, and they say, well, maybe we can open it later, but then they don't, and it never happens. So I would just start from scratch and try to design it as decentralized as possible from the ground up. I am not fan of Workcoin, but I'm not against it. I just consider it as like any other like sign-on solutions like Google or whatever. I'm not that worried about like biometrics actually. I'm more worried about governments taking over because here in Argentina we experience a lot of governments involving on that, on our privacy, and like KYC. For me, the worst problem would be KYC, like the KYC to make a legal bond and having the government involved. That might be a problem. I think most of the people do prefer, at least here in Argentina and the community in La Cripta, they do value their privacy, and most of the time it's because the government takes half of your money. It's on top of you, and you can get a lot of regulation on top of you. And I think the biggest concern is the government. The government is the biggest concern. Like the state is the worst enemy. So I would like to know if like Diego does have an approach of like, or why did you took this approach to go for the government or start with a government solution?
I agree with you that government controlling data is perhaps the biggest risk at all. I can't imagine a bigger risk than that. And today you have the digital identity thing is a trilemma. You have UX on one side, interoperability, and decentralization. And those three realities tend to fall apart. When you pursue UX and interoperability, you sacrifice decentralization. Up to now, that's the point. What we need to change is that. Today you don't have yet world-class solution, and I think that we achieved one of those, which have decentralization at the core with a good UX and a self-custodial wallet. And that today is possible with Quack ID. And the government just controls the data that the government has. Because
hang on, I would like to argue the thing that we don't have a solution yet that can tackle the decentralization, because we already have Nostr and we have the NIP 05 that makes the domain names can give identity to the users, and anybody could just run their own domain, and anybody could give the identity to anyone. So like the whole design of the system, the architecture, is just designed for anybody can give the identity. Like you have decentralization right there. Like what do you say? Like
That's okay, but the thing is, the thing that we look forward in tackling with Quack ID is precisely connecting the digital world with the real world. Because in the real world you need a government issue identity. And the thing is, how are we going to tackle that? We have a very good system, but extremely centralized, like MOSIP in India. It works fine, but the government controls every piece of information out there. Same thing happens in China, and that's the risk. What Quark ID allows is precisely to the government only controlling the data that they control, which is your birth certificate, your driver's license, or whatever data they already have, and they will keep on having because they are issuing those documents, but not only not controlling, but not even being able of knowing which other information you have, because at the end of the day you have a self-custodial wallet which is not on chain, so nobody can not even know what you have over there. And that's for me is very sound. Why? Because the governments keep control of the data, but they enable a frictionless interaction without revealing your identity and without having control at all by the government. And that is connecting the Web3 world with the real world. And for me, that's the challenge.
So the issue of what the government is doing is, like if you've read Seeing Like the State, the government wants to make a messy society legible so that it can control it, so it can regulate it, so it can do good on it. And so they make the streets straight, and they give everybody a name, and they give everybody an ID. But humanity is really messy, and we run into this conflict. So one of the projects I work on is this Maori identity project called AHO, and they're rejecting the New Zealand government's system of identity, and they use signatures and keys and signing stuff, and they have your identity by cross-signing verifications, your social relationships to your immediate family, to your tribe, and you verify all this stuff. And so everybody isn't verified against their biometric stuff or their birth date or some record, but verified in their position within the social network. And it's essentially like using a web of trust where there's cross-signing of all of your identity systems to try and do that. And then what they haven't yet succeeded is then convincing the New Zealand government that this is a legitimate alternative to KYC. And they have a whole treaty sovereignty argument for it. But more identity systems that included people cross-signing to verify each other, as opposed to am I in the government database, would give us more sovereignty.
Totally agree.
I think that both things will exist. And I think that what you're mentioning will probably rely on open source protocols in which we can vouch for other people.
It's a network of vouching.
And that will create a web of trust, a mesh network of people vouching for me. And that will be extremely strong. And that will, at the end of the day, drive inclusion. Because all of us sitting over here, we probably have credit and have personal net worth, and we're in an economic and social position in which we don't need the social trust as much as people who have very low wages and live perhaps in a slum just 20 blocks away, for which that social web of trust is probably the most important thing that they have in their lives. So enabling that is definitely a driver for inclusion, and we should pursue that goal for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we need to realize that we need to build systems of social trust that work for people in all these different situations. And some people have no ID. They have no existence in the government at all. I met this guy from Somalia who was 15 when the government collapsed, and he fled to Kenya, and there was no government to go to for an ID. There was no office, there was no registry and stuff. So he bought a fake passport and made a fake birth certificate in order to replicate the fact that he was coming from a place that didn't have a government.
Let me share you, a personal story. Something like 6 years ago, I was in charge of a very big slum upgrading project in a neighborhood called Barrio 31, which is a 40,000 people neighborhood. And there was this guy who had a very successful restaurant within the neighborhood, and I became a customer of him. And he wanted to move and lease a shop that was crossing the street. But the owner of the shop did not trust him. I say, you know what? I want you to provide me a warranty. I say, how would that work? What do you need? He said, hey, please come with me. So I crossed the street with him. We went to the owner of this new shop, and he said, please, just tell him that you vouch for me. So I told the owner, you know what, this guy is a great guy. He will honor his lease, and I will vouch for him. And the guy said, okay, I feel confident. Having the ability of digitalizing that web of trust will unlock an immense economic power,
Yeah, I think, well, you kind of alluded to the point. In the case of WorkCoin, we went for biometrics actually to address that use case, right? Like folks that don't even have a government issue ID. So how can they become part of a network and receive a digital proof of humanity, a digital ID to start participating? And I think it's a combination, right? Web of trust, I think, can be perhaps to deter bots something a bit more reactive, while something more like world or more like a proof of personhood protocol can be more preventive, right? So you have this as a first layer, web of trust on top of this, more as a moderation or reactive layer to prevent bots, which at the end of the day with AI also is going to become even more challenging, right? You can now create, impersonations, deepfakes, and all these things. So it will become a challenge also to solve identity with the complexities of AI. Doing fraud around government IDs, right? It's becoming increasingly easier to bypass processes like KYC.
Yeah, totally. I want to open up for the questions in like 2 to 3 minutes, but first of all, you mentioned AI, and I want to know your thoughts, because we heard in the beginning as well that implementing AI in this can be extremely dangerous because they can see all of the data, and if you have like this honeypot of KYC, personal information, this can actually be misused. So I'm interested in worlds, and then afterwards your take, like how can we prevent that we actually run into a dystopian future here?
Yeah, well, first, like I think AI will bring a lot of benefits and good things, and like any technology, create these sort of externalities, and kind of Word is positioned as a tool to help us address some of them, and that's why we know AI won't have biometrics, so that's why we went on that path around the iris, create an iris hash that basically up to this day, you cannot undo that. Word doesn't have any biometric info, and kind of similar to Quark ID, it gives you a self-custodial wallet with your proof of hood to act within different systems, AI, and basically prove that there's a human, right? In a full privacy preserving way, because guess what? Through iris and biometrics, I don't need to know who you are, I don't need to know your government ID, I don't need to know anything about you, right? So kind of, we tend to see as this network as a privacy preserving and solution to bots as well. So this combined with other things that we just discussed, I think it's viable solution to some of these challenges that the AI will present.
I'm actually really curious. What's going to stop the dynamic of people selling their self-custodied wallet and identity to others, like especially for people who are very marginally poor, and you have the choice of, do I have the money to pay for food or cover rent or get my child medicine? And someone is like, I want to run a bot network. I'm going to buy up self-custodied wallets of people who are particularly marginalized because the value to me to be able to use that is higher than the value to the person who has it, who is desperate to just feed their kids.
Yeah, well, this is a great question. This is why we introduce additional layers within the protocol, predominantly a feature called face-off, that basically, in order to use your Word ID, also uses your biometrics to ensure that it's the person that verified and obtained that credential, right? So in case you lose your phone or someone wants to do this, it will still need you to be able to trigger this action and use your credential. Also, thinking on ways to recover your identity, you can always go back and basically verify and obtain your Word ID, right? So kind of this is the solutions that we thought basically to address this, yeah.
One of the things about WorldCoin, what I say, like it's already happening in Argentina. Like they're going to the slums and people sell identity. It's happening right now. The thing you're saying is happening right now. We have there's a commerce of this, and I think most of the users here in Argentina do that. Actually, most are poor. So that's when people argue about against WorldCoin. Sometimes I say it's kind of like a wealth transfer of VCs that pay WorldCoin, and WorldCoin give the money back to the users, because I don't believe it would become a thing. I'm sorry. Well, I think like a WorldCoin, like most of the people are selling their identities, so that kind of proof, it is gonna become worthless sometime, because most of the users here in Argentina are poor and they just sell it for a couple of bucks. So if they try to claim that they have individual users and the signature or whatever, everybody knows that there are a lot of fake users. So when people just attack them, I say they are giving free money and it's going nowhere. I'm like, it's okay, but that's what I think. I'm sorry.
Okay. Does anybody have a question? I want to open it up. We have 7 minutes left. Yes.
Hey guys, I have a question. Right now, like you can create with the Flux or open source. Do you hear me well? Okay, yeah. I have a question. Right now, with the open source large language models, for example, Flux, I can create completely like a new personality, and then by using Hadrian, I can do like the video avatar, and basically I will pass it by like the WorldCoin, and I will get the identity in the digital world. How can you avoid this kind of, like new personality in the digital world?
Did you get the question?
It's super hard to understand you up here.
Okay,
yeah,
I will speak like shortly.
Come closer.
Okay, yeah. So basically, right now with the AI, I can create completely new persons in the internet, and then I will pass by QIC or like the WorldCoin ID. How can you avoid it? How can you be sure that I'm a real person, a real human?
Yeah, well, basically, that's some of the challenges that we see with credentials we trust today, right? That's why WorldCoin uses biometrics for you to obtain this proof of personhood. So basically, to sign up to the network uses your iris, right? We also use now government credentials as well, right? I think that gives a lower level of assurance of humanity versus using your biometrics. So basically, to obtain this proof of personhood, you need your biometrics, and then to actually use it, you need to kind of prove that you're the person that verified that is holding that credential, right? To deter these cases that he mentioned. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yep.
Hello. For me, it seems a little bit crazy that you need biometrics to make an ID on the digital world. You just need an Oster ID. You just need an Oster master key, and that's already your virtual ID. I mean, and you don't need to give any biometrics to have this ID. So it's sort of, I don't know. I mean,
it depends on what you're trying to do. So, for example, if you were to go on to Nostr and search for Rabble, you would find dozens and dozens of copies of different Nostr keys that say Rabble, and they all actually point to the same NIPO5, my actual one, but only my real one has the signatures that validate. And so, if you don't have ways of verifying out to a network, you're just using a NIPO5 that's registered someplace, then, and you don't do the cross signatures to other accounts like Keybase style, or to a government ID or something else, you're like, which is the real Rabble? Because, you know, each of these fake ones could register to a different NIPO5 server. And so the value or the assurance either comes in connecting to a KYC, to a government ID, or to a network of different accounts. You're saying this is the same Rabble on these, this is the same on GitHub and Twitter and Nostr. And if you don't do that, then the impersonation problem becomes like, yes, but everybody uses the same name, but you don't know which one is the right one.
yeah, thank you. But also, the spam, I mean, why do you need identity to solve spam? You could put a price of 1 Satoshi per email, and you could solve the spam in that way. You could put a price on
So
1 Satoshi per message, and that's how you can solve the spam problem.
So in Nostr, we did try solving the spam problem with two different ways. We started paying 1 Satoshi for each message that you posted to a relay, or paying a larger amount, like a 10,000 Satoshis per month or something like that. And there's also the ability to actually include a proof of work in the Nostr messages that go back and forth. And the problem with that was legitimate users didn't want to pay, and spammers were happy to pay. So, like, we have the ability to do that, both proof of work attached to each event you publish and payments. But the problem was those small micropayments were, the incentives were flipped.
You already said it earlier, like they got more incentives, the spammer got more incentives than the real users. Yeah, actually, it's a problem there.
Okay, awesome. That was a great conversation. I want to close it up with having your thoughts on what we need in the next years to actually come closer to fully solve this problem. Is it even fully solvable, and we will have no spam in 5-10 years? Where do you see this going?
I don't think that we'll have this problem solved next year. I think that we're just starting to walk what I think is the path, which is connecting the digital and web-free world to the real world. Today we have something like, I don't know, 200, 300 million users in web-free all over the world. There are 7.7 billion left. And the question is, how do we reach that 7.7 billion people? I think that we need to keep on working. I think that digital identity is probably one of the most important building blocks in that path. And I think that we're starting to walk that talk, and I'm happy with it. But we'll take some time to get there.
Yeah, I think we're still far, early stage. It's going to take a combination of different protocols. Hopefully it will be different protocols and decentralized platforms. I think it would be not good, not great to solve these with centralized systems. And I think we're very early stage in that matter. I mean, Ethereum processes 1.2, 1.3 million transactions per day. Amazon Web Services processes billions of transactions per day, right? So I think where it's like, it's 1 to 1,000, and we're still like very early stage. Bitcoin, 1 trillion market cap or something around that. S&P 500, 36 trillion, right? So kind of still early stage in blockchain technologies, in frictionless experiences built on this new tech stack, and hopefully will be a combination of protocols on this tech stack.
My take would be, I don't think it's a blockchain matter. I think Nostr can do that for itself. I would like to have like work on solutions maybe, but decentralized. Like, I do think that we could have different identity providers, which be the one that are responsible for the users and their behavior, and you are welcome to choose whatever identity you want. And maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them might have biometrics, some of them might need users to vouch for you, but it's still the vouching mechanism, that thinking that you need more people to vouch for you, and not designing a system that requires a central identity that says who you are, like KYC or, I don't know, WorldCoin. But what I mean is, I do trust that we can build different solutions to vouch for the users.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, identity is messy, and a lot of the time we don't need to identify ourselves to the state, and we just need to identify ourselves to each other. Like, so there's many different solutions to identity, and they're contextual. And for, example, like, I went to go renew my Uruguayan cedula, and it asked for my phone number, and then I went to go get a phone number because I don't have a phone number in Uruguay, and it asked for my two ID, my Uruguayan digital ID, and the Uruguayan digital ID asked, like, I ended up in this circular thing where I couldn't renew. I have the card, but I couldn't renew it. And the state gets you in these messy places. And everybody in person knows who I am, but putting it exclusively in software doesn't solve the problem of our human messiness.
Yes.
And spam is similar. Like, as long as we have human systems where it's people publishing stuff, there will be people who abuse it and cause spam. Like, there's no universal solution to this problem. We can just iterate and make it better.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. We need to get out of stage.